Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at another dimension of training, and that's adult learning. Have you ever thought about how you like to learn? Some people can read and take it all in. Some people need to do with their hands. Some people need to observe. We as God's creatures are very different, especially in the way that we learn new things. And that's an important understanding to come to when it comes to human resources. Not everybody learns the same way, so an effective training program will accommodate the different ways that adults learn. And this is what we're going to look at today. So let's go ahead and start with training human resources in as much as what and how adults learn. Well, welcome back, everybody, and we're continuing on in Chapter 8 with Training Human Resources, and today we're going to be looking at orientation programs and the transfer of training. Probably one of the most important tasks that you'll be assigned to in HR when it comes to staffing is developing an orientation program. Now, what is orientation? Well, as the textbook indicates, it's the planned introduction of new employees to their jobs, co-workers, and the organization. So orientation is that person's really first exposure to that organization, and it gives kind of an indication of what they can expect, and it accomplishes several things. And the book outlines those. It has several key purposes. It establishes a favorable impression of organizations, and it's the old saying goes that the first impressions are usually the lasting impressions. So you want to make sure you have a positive orientation. That person gets a positive experience when they first come into the organization, because that's really going to lay the groundwork for their future performance and attitudes towards the organization. Also, it provides the organization and job information. So here's where the person learns about the history. I know Walmart used to have in its orientation program stories about Sam Walton and what Sam Walton valued, and how he was able to take Walmart to the levels that it is today, or at least to the point where he got it so they could carry it on even further. So it provides organization and job information. It also enhances interpersonal and acceptance by coworkers. Here's where you start to let them mingle, where they become more of a presence in that organization, and they get to foster relationships and so forth. It accelerates socialization and integration. Again, you're putting them in the environment, getting them exposed to the work, the people, and so forth, so that when they do start work, they'll have a good step up on the organization to be able to just go in and start working and being a productive asset. It also ensures that employee performance and productivity begin more quickly. So again, that just pretty much reiterates what I just said, that the more they are exposed to their environment where they're going to be working, the more prepared they're going to be that first day when they actually start work. Now, when it comes to evaluating orientation, we have several methods of measurement. First of all, we want to take a look at the tenure turnover rate, and that's how many people you're losing and how long they stay. A good orientation program can really curtail that, but you need to measure those that have had a good, robust orientation exposure as opposed to those in the organization who did not. And you can measure the difference and see whether or not your orientation program is going to be worth the effort, or maybe there's adjustments that you need to make. New hire failure factor. How many people have gone through an orientation program as opposed to those who didn't, and what are those success outcomes? Employee upgrade rate, and that's just their ability to move up and to be able to take on more challenges and so forth. So we have that, and then we have development program participation. And that's when we get into development, we're looking at how engaged they are and how much they're able to progress through our orientation and subsequent programs. Now, one of the things you want to do is do a training needs assessment, and that's really evaluating what is needed in that company for that person to be able to be productive and so forth. So we see here that effective training efforts consider some questions that we're going to ask or that we need to ask. First of all, is there really a need for the training? When it comes to training and orientation, what is the need there? Do you need a comprehensive orientation program? Or is your company small and really one day or a couple of hours getting the person getting their feet wet, will that be enough? Who needs to be trained? How do you know that everybody there needs to undergo some type of formal training? Who will do the training? Will it be an outsourced entity, or will you do in-house training? Will it be done by management, or will it be done by peers? So those are some questions you need to ask. What form will the training take? Will it be more hands-on? Will it be classroom? Those are some considerations. How will knowledge be transferred to the job? And essentially, and we're going to look at transfer of knowledge here in just a few minutes, but really, can they take what they've been taught and apply it to the workplace? And how will the training be evaluated? So those are some of the questions that a training effort will need to be able to answer before you engage in or invest in a training program. Now, Figure 8.7 shows us some sources of information for needs assessment. First of all, you do the organization analysis, and some of those data will indicate maybe grievances, accidents, waste and scrap, training observations. You gather data, and from that you can be able to determine what the need is. Then you have the task analysis or the job analysis. Are the people up to date on the skills and the knowledge and the abilities that are required for that job, the KSAs? So you need to understand what's going on today in that world and to be able to facilitate training that will, for those who are lacking in that training, provide it for them. And then individual analysis, and that comes in the form of performance appraisals. Do you have people who are lacking, who are substandard? Have you tested them to see if they are going to be able to really perform the job? Do you have surveys and questionnaires to be able to get the pulse of the workers and the work environment? So these are some areas that you need to consider, and really it's not rocket science. When you are looking at doing a training program, you need to try to ask yourself these questions and find out what is the actual need. Figure 8.8 looks at training design elements, and I'll let you guys take a look at that. You take a look at the learner characteristics, what's their ability to learn, are they motivated to learn, what are their learning styles, and then you get over here to training transfer, and how do you link that training to the actual performance indicators that make that person successful, those KSAOs. What are the opportunities? Supervisory support, do you have that to be able to take what they've learned and apply it to the workplace? And instructional strategies. Are you going to be modeling behavior, overlearning, which is, we're going to look at that here in a little bit, practice and feedback. These are all instructional strategies in being able to get that person to learn what it is that you want them to learn for that particular job. Now, going back to learner characteristics, you have the issue of the person's ability to learn. I believe everybody can learn or has a capacity to learn. Our job is to find out how they prefer to learn and accommodate that instead of it being a cookie cutter approach, everybody learns one way attitude, and that's not correct. But motivation, you have to look not only at their ability to learn, but their motivation to learn. And sometimes you have to dangle that carrot in front of them. And sometimes if they don't learn, they may suffer the consequences of being fired or not promoting. So there's all types of motivations out there that can be used to motivate a person. Self-efficacy, and that's their belief that they can do something, learn, move up, and so forth. And sometimes you just need to be able to communicate to them that yes, you can do this, yes, you have the abilities, and so forth, and be like Barnabas was to Paul, be an encourager. Perceive utility and value out of the training. The learner needs to know what's in this for me, more than just my job, but this is how much better you're going to be. I remember when the military first got computers, we used to work with typewriters, and we could never see the need for a computer. We were happy with typewriters, but when they communicated to us and showed us the value of a computer, most of us were happy to change over. But sometimes you have to break through those barriers. And then you have an important element here called learning styles. Not everybody learns the same way. People have different ways of being able to take in information. And from the standpoint of the employee, we need to be aware of what is called adult learning. Now, adult learning is the way in which adults learn differently than do younger people. Now, when you take a look at younger people, you're dealing with what's called pedagogy, and that's the science of educating or how young people acquire knowledge. When you get to the adult area and older, you get to the realm, or we call it andragogy, and that's the science of how adults learn and so forth. But when you are looking at adult learning, you need to know, or they need to know, why they are learning something. What's the value in this? How am I going to gain from it? Most of the time when it comes to children, they're like a lump of clay. They're just going to sit there and just assume that this is what the teacher says, so I'm going to learn it. Older people, adults, want to know the value of whatever information they're receiving. Why am I here taking this class? Why do I do the things that I'm doing here for this grade and so forth? Also, adult learners are self-directed. A child is told to go to school. There were times when I didn't want to go to school, when I wanted to stay in bed, or I wanted to just hang out during the day and play and do whatever. But an adult is different. The adult knows that he or she needs to go to this training, and instead of being told, they will go on their own because they know of the need once it's been communicated. Bring more work-related experiences into the process. A child is, as I said, a lump of clay. They have no background, they have no experience in anything. So everything that they are being taught is something new. They have really no history upon which to judge the value or the efficacy or even the accuracy of what they're being taught. Adults are different. They bring their experience, both personal and work, into this process, and as a result, they can contribute to the learning process. And then we employ a problem-centered approach to learning. And essentially, we're not teaching theory as much as we are teaching them how to approach issues and so forth and how to resolve them. They're motivated by extrinsic and intrinsic factors. Many of my students, when I teach graduate school at other colleges, they're there for different reasons, and you're here for different reasons. But many would just want to get the education. They've never had the opportunity to get a formal or a higher education, so they go for that. So they're intrinsically motivated. Some go to college and learn or receive training because they want a promotion, or they want a raise, or they want an opportunity to work at a better place and so forth. So they have different factors that motivate them, both internal and external. And all of these combined really comprise the adult learners. So when you are developing a training curriculum for your departments, you need to be aware that this is how the adult learner learns. And from that, be able to develop your own specific curriculum to be able to accommodate these different diverse characteristics of the learner. Now, learning, practice, and feedback, you have active practice, which is performing job-related tasks and duties during training. You may show someone how to do a specific function that's pertinent to their job, and then you have them come up, okay, demonstrate what I've just done, or repeat what I've just done, and have them keep on doing it. So that would be an example of active practice. Overlearning is repeated practice. Even after you have learned or mastered the content, you're still doing it. So overlearning is really what we call overkill. You've already done it, you know it, but so there's really no need to keep it repeating it over and over again. But it's good to at least go back and revisit that training every once in a while. Behavior modeling is just copying someone else's behavior. You might have been in church working, or you might have been in an organization, and they tell you, just do what I do. Watch me and then mimic what I'm doing. And that's behavior modeling. You're taking the behaviors of someone else and applying it to your own behavior. And that's an effective way of training for many. You don't understand the concepts or the cause and effect relationships, but here you're just learning what to do in that specific situation under those specific circumstances. Now, error-based examples, and that's sharing with learners what can go wrong when they don't use the training properly. And you might have seen, I've seen tons of them, those safety videos about people who've gotten their limbs cut off or were killed or whatever because they didn't follow the behaviors that they were supposed to have followed, and they had to suffer the consequences for it. So that would be an error-based example that will motivate you just as much as the regular behavioral modeling. Reinforcement is based on the idea that people repeat responses that give them some type of positive reward and avoid actions associated with negative consequences. So reinforcement came really from behavioral theories back in the days of B.F. Skinner and John B. Watson back in the 60s and 70s, where they felt that you could condition people to do whatever you want them to do. And you've probably, if you've heard of Pavlov's dogs and operant conditioning, these are all ideas that go under reinforcement. But essentially, if I reward you for good behavior, chances are you're going to repeat that behavior. If I punish you or give you a negative consequence for a particular behavior, chances are you're not going to repeat that. It's very effective in prisons. That's how they really manage the population there. And it's used here, but you have to make sure you continually reinforce that behavior, because if not, they'll go back to the earlier behaviors, and you don't want that. Immediate confirmation, that means people learn best if they receive feedback as soon as possible after the training. You don't want them to have to linger and think that they're doing right when all along they're doing wrong, but you haven't communicated that. So you need to let them know quickly how they're doing and if they are modeling the correct behaviors or not. We mentioned transfer of training, and what that means is that they take what they have learned and really directly apply it to the job, and they can maintain that behavior over the course of time. So that is kind of one of the big factors in whether or not your training is effective, whether they can take it and apply it to the work, and also if that behavior is sustainable in the workplace. And if they do and can, then you know your training is effective. So you'll want to continue that type of instructional model. And Figure 810 just talks about training delivery options. I'll let you guys take a look at it. Normally you have traditional classes on the job, but here today we're using more and more self-guided training, which the person goes and you offer different options for training, and the person picks and chooses what types of training he or she wants. Now there's some type of training that has to be standard or universal, but a lot of times many of the employees today are self-guiding themselves because they know that the more I'm trained, the more likely I'm going to be promoted and so forth. So those are some options today that you have to be able to provide training for your people. Informal training talks about really the interaction and feedback among employees. Here, let me show you how to do this, for instance. Or this is the way you could do this better, or whatever. It's just nothing scheduled. A fellow worker or a manager can see something and point it out and just address it, and you go from there. On-the-job training is the most common. It's flexible, it's relevant. On-the-job training means just what it implies, is that you are working and learning at the same time. The problem with it is that it can be rushed and indifferent. The people there doing the training may not be as invested in the training and in you as a trainer would. You have disruption of regular work. So if you are taking time out to go through on-the-job training, that may disrupt the regular workflow and whatever. Oftentimes I haven't really seen that, but it could happen, I guess. And if you have bad habits or incorrect information passed on, that can be a problem. Now that can be an issue because many times you have employees who circumvent normal procedures for work to be accomplished. Hey, I know they told you to do it this way, but I know a better way of doing it. And that can get you into trouble. They may know shortcuts and all of that, but if something happens, if there's an accident or if something breaks or something negative happens, and you've been going by the wrong instructions, that can get you and the person who gave you the training in trouble. Now Figure 811 just talks about the steps for on-the-job training. Prepare them, and they give you some just general guidelines here. Present the information, let them practice what you have taught them, and then do follow-up. It's a fairly straightforward model, and you do it all the time. I mean, we're constantly training people, whether we realize it or not. In a normal course of our day, when we're working, whether it's in ministry or whether it's in business, we have people who we will naturally take on at times, or we will see they're doing something wrong and we'll correct that or address it and so forth. So on-the-job training, and you can really say that Jesus gave on-the-job training. He lived life with the disciples. They saw what he did. He lived life with them. They modeled his behavior. He taught them. But Jesus didn't say, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, let's get together and we will collectively go over these topics and so forth. Everything with Jesus was informal. It was relationally centered, and that's really the cusp of what and the focus of what you want to accomplish in organizations. You want to train them. There's time for formal education and training, and that will be scheduled through your HR departments. If you are HR, you'll be doing it. And when it comes to just a normal work day, encourage people to be a Barnabas, to be an encourager, and to be able to take people under their wings and be a mentor to them, and be able to show them how things should be done so that they can become a more productive worker as well. Well, that's all we have for today, and we will finish out Chapter 8 tomorrow. Well, today I hope you've been able to gain a better appreciation of how adults learn. You know, adults come to the classroom and they come to the learning experience with very unique needs, capabilities, and motivations. So, an effective HR training program will be able to facilitate all of those things and make the worker into the person that we want them to be, more productive, more fulfilled, have a better quality of work life, and have the motivation to not only do more with less, but to move up and assume greater responsibility. Well, I hope you have a good day in the Lord today, and we will finish up tomorrow as we complete chapter 8 in Training Human Resources. God bless you.